For 12 years, he had been the city's most mysterious gardener. He never talked, never smiled, just trimmed plants. Park workers called him Target Man because he examined everything like he was taking aim. But that day, when he spotted something 800 meters away and called the police, he said suspicious movement in sniper position. And in that moment, everyone realized this silent gardener was anything but ordinary. Before we continue with this powerful story of hidden precision and silent vigilance, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told. Hit that subscribe button and help us honor the quiet guardians walking among us. But what happened in the first 30 seconds was nothing compared to what came next, because when the police dispatcher asked for more details, the gardener's response froze everyone listening. He provided grid coordinates, wind direction, elevation angles, and sight lines with military precision that no civilian should possess. Central Park covered 340 acres of prime urban landscape, serving as the green heart of a city where millions of people sought escape from concrete and steel. The park's maintenance required a staff of 43 groundskeepers, landscapers, and specialized workers who kept the vast space beautiful and safe for daily visitors. Among these workers, Thomas Reed occupied the most solitary and least noticed position, head groundskeeper for the park's elevated sections. For 12 years, Thomas had been the phantom of the hilltops and overlooks. He worked alone on the park's highest points, maintaining sight lines that most visitors never consciously noticed but that gave the park its sense of open safety. He carried industrial pruning equipment, but the way he positioned himself while working suggested someone scanning terrain rather than simply trimming branches. The other park workers had developed their own theories about Thomas's unusual work patterns. Most assumed he preferred solitude, perhaps someone who found peace in working above the crowds rather than among them. But what they didn't know was creating a mystery that was about to explode into the open, because Thomas had habits that went far beyond normal groundskeeping. Every morning, he conducted what appeared to be a systematic surveillance sweep of the entire park. Not casual observation, methodical threat assessment. He noted new faces, unusual behavior patterns, and potential security vulnerabilities with the kind of focused attention that suggested training and threat recognition. His equipment choices exceeded standard gardening requirements. Thomas carried rangefinders, weather monitoring devices, and communication equipment that park maintenance budgets didn't typically cover. When asked about the extra gear, his only explanation was better to be prepared. But what really set Thomas apart wasn't his equipment, it was his positioning. He instinctively chose work locations that provided maximum observation coverage of the park's most vulnerable areas. Playgrounds, gathering spaces, and event venues all fell within his sight lines from carefully selected elevated positions. Most telling was his reaction to aircraft. When helicopters or small planes passed overhead, Thomas would automatically assess their flight paths, altitude, and potential threat levels with a kind of immediate analysis that suggested extensive training in airspace security. What none of them knew was that Thomas Reed had spent 15 years as a Marine Scout sniper with the 3rd Marine Division. He had conducted long-range surveillance and precision engagement missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the ability to identify threats from extreme distances meant the difference between successful mission completion and catastrophic losses. Thomas's understanding of sight lines, ballistics, and threat assessment wasn't theoretical. It was practical knowledge developed through hundreds of hours of Overwatch missions where protecting ground forces required constant vigilance from concealed positions. But Thomas had been hiding this background for 12 years, using his sniper training for peaceful purposes, keeping park visitors safe through systematic observation rather than targeted elimination. What he hadn't expected was that his old skills would suddenly become necessary in ways he'd hoped to never experience again. On the morning everything changed, Thomas was conducting routine maintenance on the park's observation deck when his trained eye caught something that made his blood freeze. 800 meters away, on a rooftop overlooking the park's main pavilion, he spotted movement that triggered every threat recognition protocol he'd learned in 15 years of military service. The figure was partially concealed, positioned in a way that provided excellent sight lines to the pavilion where a children's event was about to begin. More critically, the person's equipment and positioning suggested someone with advanced marksmanship training conducting pre-shooting surveillance. Thomas's military training kicked in automatically. Without hesitation, he reached for his radio and contacted park security with information that would immediately expose his carefully hidden background. "This is Reed on the north observation deck. I have eyes on a potential sniper position, Building 7, rooftop level, approximately 800 meters southeast of the pavilion. Subject appears to be conducting target assessment of the children's event area." The security dispatcher's response revealed how unusual Thomas's report was. "Reed, how were you able to identify sniper positioning from that distance?" Thomas made a decision that would end 12 years of anonymity. "Because I know what sniper overwatch looks like. Call SWAT immediately and clear the pavilion. This is not a drill." Within minutes, the park was swarming with tactical teams, counter-sniper units, and federal agents who cordoned off the entire area while conducting a systematic search of the suspected building. Thomas found himself in the uncomfortable position of being both a witness and a technical consultant, directing the response team toward the threat he had identified. "Your former military," Agent Sarah Chen said during the initial interview. "It wasn't a question." "Marine Scout Sniper, 15 years. But I've been out of that world for 12 years. And in 12 years of groundskeeping, you've never encountered anything like this." "Number. And I hoped I never would." The investigation confirmed Thomas's assessment. The suspect was indeed a trained marksman who had been conducting surveillance of the children's event as preparation for what appeared to be a planned attack. Thomas's intervention had prevented what could have been a catastrophic mass casualty incident. After the scene was secured, Agent Chen offered Thomas a position with federal law enforcement, utilizing his sniper expertise for counter-terrorism operations in urban environments. "You could save a lot of lives," she said. "People with your background and observational skills are exactly what we need for protecting civilian targets from threats like this." "I'll consider it," Thomas replied, though he wasn't sure he was ready to return to work where his primary responsibility involved identifying and neutralizing human targets. Over the following weeks, Thomas made a decision that honored both his military experience and his civilian goals. He remained in park maintenance but began consulting for federal agencies on security assessments of public spaces where his sniper training could help identify vulnerabilities before they became threats. The work allowed him to use his specialized knowledge without returning to active combat operations. His colleagues at the park never learned the full details of what had happened that day, but word spread through the veteran community that Central Park had a groundskeeper whose observational skills had prevented a terrorist attack. Thomas never advertised his military background or sought recognition for his intervention, but he no longer felt the need to hide completely from the skills that had once kept Marines alive in combat zones where constant vigilance meant survival. Sometimes the most important protection comes from people whose training prepared them to see threats that others would miss until it was too late. Thomas had spent 15 years learning to identify dangers from impossible distances, skills that proved just as valuable in protecting children at play as they had been in protecting soldiers at war. So I ask you, have you ever encountered someone whose awareness of their surroundings seemed to go far beyond normal caution? Someone whose ability to spot potential problems suggested training and experience they couldn't discuss? Share their story in the comments, because sometimes the most important protection comes from people whose vigilance never truly ends. If this story moved you, subscribe and help us honor the quiet protectors who carry life-saving skills from military service into civilian life. Because sometimes the most valuable security comes from people whose real qualifications involve seeing threats before they become tragedies. And next time you see someone whose alertness seems almost supernatural, Remember that some people's training never truly ends, it just finds new ways to serve.